Good morning and welcome to the special edition of the Arizona Capital Times Morning Scoop. Today we will talk about next week's general election and preview what the results might be. All indications point to Arizona as a battleground state. In the last few election cycles, Democrats have gained seats in the U.S. Congress as well as in the state legislature. The fact that President Donald Trump and Democrat challenger Joe Biden have spent considerable time in Arizona in the last 2 weeks suggests they view our state as critical to their success. We have a great panel this morning. Joining us is Republican strategist J. Charles Chuck Coughlin, President and Chief Executive Officer of High Ground Public Affairs. High Ground Public Affairs offers lobbying, communication, public opinion, polling, social media, and campaign management services. Chuck is a 5-time winner of the Arizona Capital Times Best Political Operative, and he served as Governor Jan Brewer's transition chairman for her 2009 transition team. He was also the campaign manager for Governor Fife Symington's 1994 re-election campaign. Chuck, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you, Luigi.
Also joining us is Democrat strategist Paul Ulan. Paul is the principal at Primary Consultants. He is behind most, if not all, bonds and overrides campaigns in Arizona. He started Primary Consultants 2 decades ago. Today, it is one of the most experienced and successful consulting firms in the state. Primary Consultants also provides polling and public affairs services to private and public sector clients. Previously, Paul served as vice president of the Summit Group. Paul, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Luigi. Appreciate the opportunity.
Also joining us is pollster Paul Bentz, the senior vice president for research and strategy at High Ground Public Affairs. Paul specializes in public opinion surveys and is back-to-back winner of Best Pollster by the Arizona Capital Times. He has nearly 2 decades of experience in strategy, messaging, and campaign management. He has performed survey research for Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, school districts, business organizations, and many other clients. And his work has helped to shape some of the most monumental public policy issues in the state. Paul, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, so let's talk about the presidential race. Let me ask you your predictions. Let's start with Chuck.
That's great. Thanks.
An easy one to start.
Well, my colleague, Mr. Bentz, the other day, I think summed it up. So I'll steal his best line from our kitchen discussion the other day. So look at what happened, because history is always a good foreteller of the future, we think at least. Maybe 2020 won't hold to that, but Donald Trump won Arizona last time by 3.5 percentage points, about 95,000 votes. In that cycle, there was a +7 Republican participation advantage. So that means that Republicans were 7% more than Democrats in the cycle. And let's talk about how many voters. There's about 2.6 million voters in that cycle. So today, as of today, which is Friday or Thursday for your listeners, sorry, there's nearly 2 million votes in, and Democrats are outperforming Republicans on a statewide basis by about 2 points. And so you'd look at that and you'd say that's certainly not a +7 cycle. Paul and I worked on the last cycle, or projecting this cycle, we had it a +3 Republican. And we are looking today as that'd be pretty good to get to today from +2 Democrat to +3 Republican. It's possible because Republicans have caught up over the last few days. But let's say that it certainly doesn't appear to be a +7 cycle. That would be a monumental shift from where we are today. And he won by a very narrow margin. So if you were asking me to look at the numbers today, I'd say that it'll be a Biden win, a narrow Biden win here in Arizona on sometime next Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday.
Right. Sometime Wednesday, Thursday, or maybe even Friday, right? Because with early voting, which Arizona is really known for, and we've done early voting for decades, and we've become pretty efficient at early voting. But early voting does mean sometimes that in close races, you got to wait for results for a couple of days. Paul, your predictions, sir.
So Luigi, I appreciate Chuck's analysis, and I think he's pretty spot on. I think it's Biden, right now, as a Democrat, we're seeing numbers that I've never seen in 30 years of doing this, where not only Democrats close or even, but actually ahead, not only statewide, but in Maricopa County. And, right now in Maricopa County, I think it's on a return basis, it's around 50,000 votes, plus 24,000 votes in Maricopa County. We've never seen those kinds of numbers. And you look at before they started voting 4 years ago, Democrats were down by about 96,000 votes over Republicans. So, this isn't clearly, I think this shows the president is unpopular. He's toxic, and that those swing votes that helped him carry the state aren't there, and we're seeing that same movement across the country, which is one reason why both parties and both campaigns have have come to Arizona the last week.
So Joe Biden for you as well. You think?
Yes,
he will win
I think Biden.
now?
I think Biden carries the state. I think it's close. This is not it is Arizona. Even when Clinton carried the state, it was a narrow amount, and I think that's what we're looking at, a 2 to 3 point, 50, 52, 53, maybe 52, 53%.
Paul Bentz, what are you seeing so far in the early returns? Last time we spoke, you told me that Republicans historically have been better at early votes. They've turned in their ballots earlier, especially the older voters. But now you've seen a reverse you haven't seen, previously.
Sure. Two things you could count on for Arizona early ballots is that the early ballots would be old and they'd be Republican. I mean, that's basically been the standard across most races for the past 20 years or so. Republicans really invented and exercised and perfected early voting here 20 years. When I first started working on this, they were the ones who really did it well, and it took a while for them to catch up. What we're seeing this time around is, in fact, a flip of that, where Democrats have really got out of the gate quickly and fast, and then everybody's trying to play catch up. It's very reflective of what we saw during the primary. During the primary in August, although that feels like years ago now, right? COVID months are like dog years. What we're actually, just a few months ago, we saw Democrats get out to a very early lead, and then Republicans closed the gap as the final days came in, but never to the typical expectation where they had been in the past. So what we're seeing right now is a high Democrat turnout, really getting out quickly. And then the other thing we're seeing, though, is there's over 700,000 voters of low efficacy who have showed up already, that have never voted in an election before, or only one of 3. Out of that group, more than 71% are either Democrat or independent. So only 29% of that low efficacy group is Republican. So we're actually seeing a twofold challenge that Republicans are facing right now, where they are behind in the high efficacy voters, but they're also behind in the lower or new voters as well.
So we've seen President Donald Trump visit Arizona, 7 times now, something like that, right? And he was here just a couple of days ago, and yesterday he was here again. He did a campaign rally in Bullhead City, and then in Goodyear. Chuck and Paul Ulan, do big campaign rallies like that, do they actually help? And I guess it kind of validates how important this our state is for Donald Trump's reelection chances.
Yeah, there's no doubt that the indication, both tickets have been here multiple times now, and so it's clear that their data is showing what we're talking about. is there's some shifts going on that people hadn't seen before. As to the rally concept, we back to Paul's point about COVID, Paul Bentz's point about COVID, we saw at the beginning, the pandemic took away what Trump's biggest advantage was the ability to hold these giant rallies, which perceptually lead people to believe exactly what opposite of what we're talking about, is that Trump is overwhelmingly popular and it uses the medium of television and crowds. I mean, I was listening to Vaughn Hilliard's piece that was on MSN, NBC, or news the other day. He talks about to those Trump supporters, it galvanizes them. They feel validated and supported, and we're going to win because they get together. Conversely, in the era of COVID, when you get together like that, you're also sending a message to, those independent, and Paul's data indicated that, there's a dichotomy between how Republicans and Democrats look at COVID. Democrats and most unaffiliated voters think it's a crisis, and most Republicans don't. And so it limits your ability to speak to those swing voters Paul Bentz was talking about, to bring them into your fold, because they're looking at you going, that's a super spreader event, and so whether it is or not, it's the perception that that's what it is. And so it limits the president's ability. So I think what he's doing now is, both Paul Ulan and Paul Bentz were talking about, is all he's trying to do is catch up. All he's trying to do is turn out the base. And that's, going to Mojave County, it's not going to, it's not, Paul and I were joking the other day, you were playing the penny slots up there, not the dollar slots in Scottsdale of swing voters out there. And so you're going and you're trying to drive turnout in Mojave County. That says something about where they think they're at.
Paul, your thoughts?
I agree. And the rallies or the appearance, it's obviously it's a different mindset, during COVID, but it's to fire up the base and to get the base excited and motivated. I remember Clinton flew over Arizona when we lost the first time. If he landed on the the joke within the party was, if he landed on the tarmac, opened up the door of the plane and waved, Clinton would have carried Arizona twice, not once. So there is a value to coming and trying to plant the flag, and I think we saw this 4 years ago. Arizona was in play. I think the Republic said it best. There was an editorial early on. I think Trump had made 6 or 7, and major surrogates had made 6 or 7 appearances in Arizona, where historically in the past, the president comes in once, it's done, you put it in the red column and you move on to other states. Clearly with the demographics and the president and policies, Arizona's in play, and we were in play 4 years ago, and now the money and the efforts are showing, and that's why both campaigns have made an effort to come the last week into the state.
So, Paul, go ahead.
I mean, there's a reason why Trump was here in Bullhead City and Goodyear, and why Pence is coming on Friday. There's 450,000 ballots of likely voters in Maricopa County alone that are likely voters, are going to vote. These people have a strong history of voting in Arizona elections. 48, almost 49% of them are Republicans. They have a ballot return problem of the president's own making, by making people worried or nervous about the mail system that they are now dealing with, that they're trying to counteract. They can say, the president, I know he said, oh, we're going to win Arizona, we're going to win it big, but their actions don't speak to that. Quite frankly, them coming back again and again shows that they're nervous about the state. But the bigger issue at play is, by them going to Bullhead City, by them going to Goodyear, they're not playing the big game. This is all about the president winning. This is all about Trump. There are no coattails to be talked about here. He's not trying to help the swing districts. He's not trying to keep the Arizona legislature in the hands of Republicans. He's not really trying to help Martha McSally. He called her up for a minute speech today or yesterday and said, come here, Martha. No one wants to hear from you. It's clear that when she didn't give 4 opportunities to compliment the president and she didn't take it, it's clear that he heard that. And so it's not about anything besides Trump. They're going to try to run it up, as Chuck mentioned, in the penny slots. They're going to try to spike turnout in the high voter areas. But we could end up with a state where a chamber flips, where they lose the Senate, and a number of things happen. Maybe Maricopa County gets more competitive and the president wins. There's no other gambit here besides trying to make him win at this point.
Let's talk about the U.S. Senate race. That's our segue, Paul. Thank you for that. So, Paul Ulan, your prediction on Tuesday, or Wednesday, or Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Well, I think Wednesday or Thursday is optimistic on those results. My guess is they're going to have, and Paul quoted the numbers. We're probably going to have 300,000 to 400,000 ballots dropped off and mailed in election weekend, which won't be counted election night. I think Friday might even be optimistic in getting the results. We'll see the trends. There's no question about that. But depending on who returns and where they're coming from, we might not know for a while. I mean, I think it's a close race. We're seeing it. Arizona is purple right now. I think Mark Kelly wins the race. I think it's hard for McSally to win if Trump doesn't carry the state, and I can see Mark Kelly winning even if Trump pulls off the upset and carries the state.
Chuck, same question to you, sir.
Can I go back to something Paul was talking about?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Arizona vote.
Yep.
I want to talk about that because I was doing some math today on the 1.9 million that are in. Because
we've
been watching that.
Not doing math. We're in trouble here, guys.
Yeah, he always gets nervous when I do the liberal arts major. He's a math major. The liberal arts guy does math in the morning. There could be. I'll be math checked here by the mathematician. But
wait.
It's almost 2.2, by the way. It's almost 2.2 million returns.
Right. So what I was looking at on the 1.97 earlier was that Greater Arizona, so non-Pima, non-Maricopa voters, it's about 150,000 of that right now for Republicans. Democrats are at 143,000. So there's only a 7,000 voter gap in that right now. And then the unaffiliated voters is at 93,000. And so we've consistently seen that the president is winning that Greater Arizona audience by at least a 2-to-1 margin. But that's not enough voters to overcome that overwhelming turnout that's happening in Pima County and in Maricopa County. So one of the things we were always wondering about the president's race and Republicans in general is, can they spike turnout, like volume of turnout in Greater Arizona? These numbers as of today don't support that. To the Kelly McSally, we waited last time, right? We waited in 18. We went to bed and McSally was ahead. And then we suspected as those late ballots came in that Sinema was going to pull it out. As Paul Bentz has articulated here, there may be a change in behavior here where late ballots are actually Republican ballots, but this race has not been close. It's not been close for a while. I think we'll see on election night a 4 or 5 point margin for Kelly on election night. And maybe that closes a bit, but I think we can turn the lights off on this one early on election night. I'm pretty sure by when we go off the air at 11 o'clock, we'll have 2 Democratic senators for the first time since 1952.
It's quite interesting that Paul Ulan, you actually think it's going to be close, and Chuck, you don't think it's going to be quite close.
No, Paul's just being cautious because they've never won out here.
Yeah, knocking on wood. He's being humble right now. It's a humble brag right now.
It's a humble.
I've never seen what does this look like? I'm not sure.
I'm trying to manage the message of the beating that I want to, you don't want to deliver bad news on election night. You want to lead up to it and say, well, we sort of saw this coming. And
Paul's Buda Baker right now, running, hoping the Seattle Seahawks doesn't catch him. I think what we're going to see is probably what we're used to, and traditionally, as I said, Republicans vote early, older voters vote early, and then Democrats, younger, unaffiliated voters come in later. And so on election night 2 years ago, McSally had a little bit of a lead, but we all pretty consistently said it's not enough of a lead to hold on to win. Sinema's going to win this race. I think all three of us probably went on record that night saying it was likely that Sinema was going to win that race, and that's what happened. I think what we're going to see is a little bit of a difference this time around, where you're going to see Mark Kelly with the lead, which people like Paul and others aren't used to, but it will degrade a little bit, but it won't. I don't think there's enough election day voters to win this for McSally, combined with the fact that there is clearly no love from the president for her not willing to say nice things about him in her debate. That got back to him. The way he was acting yesterday and in previous visits, I think the most telling thing is when the previous visit to this, when he was in Tucson talking to the press pool and said, I could win this state and have a senator that does extremely poorly in the same state. That was clearly a shot at her. He doesn't expect her to win. And if him and his base don't expect her to win, I don't think we can expect her to win either.
Luigi, let me add
go ahead,
something
Paul.
to this discussion. So part of the, when you're looking at these returns, and Chuck's right, when you look at all the polling almost the last year, Mark Kelly's, been ahead and been ahead by a big margin. Part of that is, at least what I've seen, the public polls, Mark's been ahead in Maricopa County by 8, 10, 12 points. And as Paul and Chuck know, no Democrat has carried Maricopa County by those numbers. And this is going to be a good segue. If Mark wins, and I think Mark wins, and Mark carries Maricopa County by 6, 8, 10 points, watch out. A number of these legislative seats are gonna flip. And I think some are going to flip anyway, but that's the blue wave of people of Democrats just coming out and voting Republicans out.
Before we go to the legislative races, let's talk about CD6 just real quick. Because CD6, Congressional District 6, which we have the incumbent David Schweikert running against or being challenged by a Democrat, Hiral Tabernini. That's a district that has a 12-point advantage insofar as registration. And that district, has performed well for Republicans every election cycle. Do you think that the Democratic challenger, and to what extent does she have a chance realistically in this year? Let me start with Paul Ulan.
This is the year where she has a chance, and right now, Democrats are outperforming Republicans, but by almost 10 points on the returns. Republicans are only up by about 20,000 returns, with almost 80,000 unaffiliated voters out there. This is the year, any other year Schweikert wins this race. I think it's close. I think it's the 3 or 4 points that we're seeing, but Hiral Tabernini has a tough hill to climb right now. But I'd be nervous if I'm David Schweikert looking at these returns, for sure.
Chuck?
Well, so I saw Dr. Tabernini on election night in 2019 at Mayor Gallego's victory party, and she was beseeching me that she had a shot. I told her there's no way. I said, you got to pick better districts to run in, because she tried up in in the Northwest Valley here last time, and that was a Everest type climb. And I said, you keep, as you started off this segment, you keep talking about, Republican advantage. And so I was like, you got a lot of work to do, dear. And I said, so here's what's happened. You got a pandemic. She's a doctor. You got Schweikert's problems of the ethics violation and fundraising. You got the DCCC pouring a ton of money into this race. And then factually on the ground, we were helping our good friend Virginia Cordy trying in the mayoral race in the primary in the primary. And our model, based on previous mayoral races in Scottsdale, showed a 26% Democratic turnout. Well, that was 38. And David Ortega, who's the only Democrat in the field, was the top vote getter. I mean, admitted that the Republican base was divided between a lot of other candidates. Lisa Borowski was the second place finisher. But the model showed that there was a lot of Democratic enthusiasm at that point. All of city of Scottsdale is within District 6. And then you have that other part of it that sort of swings over into North Phoenix, sort of Bill Gates's district up there, where you historically look at the map. And that was heavy Sinema territory last time, where Sinema won a good chunk of her advantage last time in Maricopa County was out of that part of Schweikert's district. So yeah, it looks, I agree with Mr. Ulan that it's certainly something to watch. If there is a seat that flips in this cycle, it will be that one. And then I think we got to talk about, eventually talk about redistricting and talk about some of Greg Stanton's District 9 moving that way. And then that becomes a much more long-term competitive district, potentially over redistricting. So it's a possible thing. It's something to watch. It has great portents of 22 and beyond of how the state is looking.
Paul Bentz.
And Luigi, let me add, I think depending on what how those initial numbers come out and what's turned in, that's one of those where we might be watching that one for several weeks as those returns keep coming in and they start counting those ballots. Sorry, Paul, didn't mean to steal your thunder.
No, I mean, ultimately, as it is right now, if she were to win, it would be a Sam Coppersmith or Jay Blanchard situation where it'd be a one-term Democrat in a Republican-dominated district because lightning in a bottle. But one thing that Chuck mentioned that I think is important to note is that we are going to experience redistricting. So if she were to win in this race, long term, there would be an impetus to try to draw a friendlier district. That demographic in that area is changing along that 101 corridor. That's a spot where the higher wage earners, the demographics of that area, if you look at compared to like say Obama versus Romney in 12 versus Sinema versus McSally 2 years ago, it's definitely, that's the area that's made kind of a big shift. That's why LD28, when we get to it, is changing. Those sort of areas are growing and changing over time. She has a shot this time around, and the makeup of the district really is against it. Republican ballot returns right now, as you said, Luigi, are about +12 usually. It's about +6 right now, so it's down. And I would suspect those independents would lean more the Democrat way this time around. So I think she's got to, it'll be competitive. It's not a walk-off, though. I'm not giving it to her, but it will be much more competitive and much closer than it's ever been.
Yeah, that area north of Shea is still, there's a pop-up shop for a Trump store north of Shea on the Pima Road up there. That is doing brisk business, baby. That is seriously hardcore Trump area north of Shea up there. So when people that I talked to about that district, and Scott Smith, who works in our office, he's like, what are you guys talking about? I mean, because they do not see the rest of the district that south of Shea and towards the 51 over there. They don't see that as part of them. And so it will be a shocker if this happens, though. It will be a shocker to a lot of people.
So on my way in this morning, I saw a Trump truck, a big giant 2-ton truck with 6 flags on it. One of the flags was a Confederate flag with Trump on it. I hope they're not selling them up there. I have to say, I don't think that's helpful for those key swing demographics south of Shea to fly the Trump Confederate flag in those.
I don't think they care though. That's
and I would say, Luigi, sometimes it's better to be lucky, than good. And right place, right time. Paul Bentz talked about Sam Coppersmith and Jay Blanchard, and those two upsets, and being involved in both of those. Right place, right time with the right kind of candidate. And this is the year. Right place, right time. Her Al's working hard. As Chuck said, she's a doctor during a pandemic. Schweikert is hemorrhaging money left and right, and facing ethical and legal challenges. If there was a time, this is the year for it.
And he's never been a good fundraiser either. I mean, that's the other challenge that nobody's talking about. Is we've got millions being raised. Mark Kelly is almost a presidential level fundraiser. Wendy Rogers have been unbelievable on the Republican side in creating a base for fundraising, and somehow David Schweikert still continues to struggle.
So let me finish this segment with one thing. I think Schweikert's still going to win that race. I do think he's still going to win. I don't want to go so far over by it. I still think he's going to win the race, but it's going to be, we may not know that race for several days.
A 12-point voter registration advantage by Republicans, and you think it's going to be close. I guess the lesson is that you should have started a side business selling Trump and Biden campaign materials and others, and you would make a killing, I suppose.
What we said early on, if Trump would have just adopted the Trump mask, it would have been a huge hit.
Let's talk about the legislative races.
Luigi, let me add one thing. If you go back to looking at the special when Lesko beat Tipernini in the special, that was and I don't know, plus 15, Paul, or and Tipernini lost by 3.5. Now, she still lost, but I mean that base eroded in that special election. I think Schweikert's dealing with the same shallenges.
Yeah, it's I see all this stuff about Texas and how we're close in Texas. I mean, it might be a moral victory to get it to 3. Democrats aren't winning Texas. Let's be clear. I think Arizona's in play, but I don't think Democrats are winning Texas. It's the same thing. Democrats aren't winning Lesko's district. They're not beating Debbie Lesko in the far West Valley. Now, 6 is, I think, going to be close, but 6 is the Arizona to CD8's Texas. I mean, that's sort of the equivalent, I'd say here.
So let's talk about the legislative races. We've seen Democrats gain seats in the state legislature over a couple election cycles. That district in what used to be McComish's district, John McComish's district, that's used to be a Republican district. Now we have Democrats there. The LD28 House, used to be a Republican district, then became a split district, and now we have 2 Democrats in the House as well. But okay, so let me ask Paul Ulan, which chamber do you think Democrats will flip, the House or the Senate, or both, or none of them?
Well, so you put the Democrat in the uncomfortable position of never having done this. Yeah, the last time the Senate was 15-15, my client was Jay Blanchard, and Randall Gannant cut the deal. I think it's the Senate has a very strong possibility of going 15-15. You look at the numbers in 28, and Kate Brophy-McGee has. That's a very, very close race. And you look at a couple of the other Senate seats that are in play. Now, I say this, we've always triaged districts. Districts we're going to lose regardless, districts we're going to win regardless. And you start working on that middle. And these are all tough districts. I mean, they're tough districts because we haven't won there the last 10 years. We're going to talk about District 20. which is going to come up, where the last Democrat was Jackie Thrasher, and she ran, I think, 3 or 4 times prior to winning, and then lost in a close race for re-election. So I think the House is going to flip. I think it's a couple seats. I'm sure we can talk about the returns. And as I've said, I've never seen in my 30 years of looking at the data, not only Democrats close, but Democrats ahead in most of these districts. Now, those numbers are clearly tightening up. And as Paul Bentz said, historically, those early returns were always older and Republican, and we're just not seeing it this year. 4 years ago, Democrats in Maricopa County trailed Republicans by about 96,000 ballots, election day. To be even to be ahead or even close shows the amount of money and effort that is spent over the last 4 years to help close the gap. So I think the Senate has a shot at being 15-15, and I think the House flips.
Chuck, what about you, sir?
So we, from the very beginning of the cycle, we're looking at some potentials here. We were originally looking at 4 as a Republican pickup opportunity. That doesn't appear to be happening. There's a giant advantage for the Democrats down there. So sort of scratch that. 6, which is Pima or Coconino County, the northeast part of the state. Right now, as at this time, it's even. Republican and Democrats are even, with independents, unaffiliated voters showing up largely. That looks like it's still in play. The Senate and potentially 1 or 2 House seats. There's an independent running up there as well. So that's a clear opportunity. 17, the Southeast Valley. Right now, as of today, Democrats are even or roughly even on turn-ins. Again, with a significant, 26% of the electorate unaffiliated. 20, Democrats are winning turnout in 20. And then 21, we looked at, it doesn't appear to be playing that way. God bless Kate Brophy McGee, my favorite state, my senator, who has been a paradigm of bipartisanship and trying to get things done, trying to lead the Republican caucus on very, very difficult issues. Right now, today, Democrats have 4,000 more votes in than Republicans. So that is a serious uphill climb. So to your larger question, I could see the House easily moving into a Democratic leadership. And we should end this segment talking about what does that look like, because that's going to be interesting. That'll be like a kindergarten show down there, who's in charge. But then you'll have the Senate. I'd agree with Paul. I think there's a potential for a tie. There's no Republican pickup opportunities in this. They're playing defense everywhere, and so potentially a tie, maybe a 1-seat majority. So again, it doesn't look good as of today, and in the trend lines on voting, and they're playing deep. Republicans are playing defense everywhere.
Paul Bentz, sir.
Well, it would be the most 2020 thing for both chambers to be tied. I mean, that would be, couldn't get more. And then the murder hornets become the Speaker of the House. And, you honestly, I think for those at home who don't follow this as closely as we all do, it's 17-13 right in the Senate right now, and it's 31-29 in the House. So it takes 2 seats to flip to split the Senate, and it takes only 1 seat in the House to split the House. The 2 seats that we've talked mostly about is LD6, which is that Coconino County White Mountains district formerly occupied by Sylvia Allen. She lost in the primary to Wendy Rogers, probably one would consider the more conservative candidate. She's got Trump on her signs, for example.
She's
And
also raised the most money of any legislative candidate.
and very
That's
successfully, a perennial candidate will do that. When you build your fundraising list over several years, you do get pretty good at raising money. But she's challenging Felicia French, who is a combat nurse. That race is got TV. I mean, legislative races with TV advertisements is kind of mind blowing. I know that it happens in fancy places like California, but we're not really used to it. I think that's one that if Sylvia Allen were still in this race, I think she'd be more competitive. LD6 has long been a Republican owned, but statistically swing district. I think most money believes that it's likely that French can pick up that seat on the Senate side. We'll see if Republicans lose a seat on the House. And then the other one Chuck mentioned is Cape Breton McGeehan, LD 28. It's a 5-point Democrat return advantage. That district is at the tail end of 10 years of redistricting. It is going the way it's going to go. It's going more Democrat. So I think I agree with the other two distinguished gentlemen here that it's likely the Senate is split. The House is the one that gets a little bit more complicated when you look at it. LD 20 is a really interesting example in that statistically, LD 20 has been a swing district from the outset, but just never acted like one. It's also, in addition to Jackie Thrasher, it's also where Doug Quellen came from back in the day with his hot air balloon and Q sign up in the air. It's a unique one. I think that's one that people are watching that has a chance of flipping that maybe people don't expect. I expect Democrats will pick up a seat in 6, but there is an independent in there. I could see Art Babbitt picking up that seat. He's run a very good and competent campaign talking about issues that are very important to that district. It's a unique spot that it goes more Republican. Ultimately, I think right now when you look at LD6, the one, I don't think there's a pathway for Brenda Barton to win. I think Blackman has a chance of winning one of the seats, but I don't think it's going to be 2 Republican seats like it is now.
No, back to Paul, District 20. When Anthony Kern is, who is a presidential elector for Trump, is touting his bipartisan voting nature, there's something amiss here, folks. You know, we talked to him the other day, and he goes, "Across the aisle with a smile," and I'm like, "That's your new slogan, eh?" He goes, "Absolutely." I said, "Well, when did you do that?" And he goes, "Well, Amish Shah ran a bill that you couldn't beat up medical personnel in the hospital." I said, "Well, that's definitely a bipartisan measure. That's good for you." I said, "But you know, it's just humorous to watch somebody with Kern's voting record who's so staunchly conservative to be selling himself as a bipartisan candidate. That's just a riot, man." So,
well, I think it happened, Chuck, when they started looking at the returns.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's one of those bipartisan. It's the deathbed confession, man. You know, it's like I'm really a cynic for that.
And Luigi, let me add this because we're all having fun with this, and to some degree, it's new territory for all of us because we're looking at these returns. And 4 years ago, even though strides have been made, didn't quite get there. And again, historically, Democrats, we tend to pick up more seats in gubernatorial elections when people are paying more attention to the legislature and turnout is a little bit more manageable than through the roof. When you get higher turnout, and again, historically, Republicans turn out at a higher rate and tend to be more disciplined or loyal to the party brand. That's not the year for this. So we're all looking at these returns and trying to figure out, do we pop the champagne now, or do we, come up and get worried or come up short? And so it's interesting. And as we've been tracking these almost 3 weeks for these returns, and I think it's important to add, give credit to to Adrian Fontes, who's half the state, and all the county recorders for getting this data out so we can actually look at those returns and do some analysis. It's interesting, the Democratic edge that has been there is starting to shrink, but I don't know any Republican running right now in these districts in 17, in 20, 21, 6, even 11, which we'll talk about, have to be comfortable looking at those numbers. I mean, it's out of our scope, but Devin Hodge has a shot to knock off an incumbent board of supervisor when you start looking at those returns. I mean, this is a Democratic year, or it appears to be in Arizona. And with that, a lot of these things come into play. And again, I think that helps. It helps, it's Biden helping and Mark Kelly with some of those coattails where individuals are, their Democrats are coming out and are excited to vote. I mean, that's what we're seeing when Democrats turned out in a presidential election in March, which seems like 2 years ago, at almost 50%. And really on election day, it was a 2-person race. Everybody else had dropped out. Democrats are enthused. And what we're seeing right now, and Chuck and Paul have talked about it, Republicans aren't right now. Or if they are, it's really for Trump and really nobody else.
So one thing I think that's important to note is that it hasn't been said to this point. Democrats picked up 4 seats in the House 2 years ago. And we're not talking about any of those races going backwards. Those are assumed at this point, based on everything we've talked about so far, that they stay in Democrat hands. LD17 is a great example. Jennifer Powlek won pretty surprisingly with a very concentrated and very effective effort in LD17 in the heart of Gilbert last time. Nobody is saying, oh, she's going to get knocked off. I mean, that's the general consensus is right now you've got 36 to 36% turnout Republicans versus Democrats in LD17. No one's assuming that Republicans can take that seat back. I think it's important to note, as Chuck mentioned, right now there's very little offense being played at the legislative level by Republicans right now. It's almost exclusively defense. And so I think it's important for your audience to know that when we're looking at this, that really ultimately we don't see Democrats losing any of the seats that they picked up 2 years ago. We're looking at seats that prospectively they could win.
So let's go through some of these legislative races just real quickly. And I want to ask you, who do you think will win? All right, let's talk about LD17, JD Mesnard or AJ Cordugle. Chuck.
It's in the heart of cinema country, that growing Democrats call it a pollen, Republicans call it a cancer. It's in the heart of that area down there that you see some transition going on. They've poured a ton of money, Democrats, into winning that race. I'm going to say that Mesnard holds on because it doesn't happen until it happens. But that could happen. That's one of those could happen things. So I'll say Mesnard holds on to that seat by the narrowest of margins.
Paul Ulan.
I would agree. I think the House side is safe. It's just really tough. I think it can happen. I think that's going to be one we're not going to know for several days. They're going to have to count all those ballots to get the final numbers. There's
$1.5 million in outside spending in that district alone. I mean,
crazy.
Do you think Republicans will want to reconsider the dark money ban after this? We were trying to do that a couple of years ago. We told them this is coming. And, now, Karen Fan is like, this is crazy. And we're like, well, maybe that was, that was probably a good idea back in the day. Somebody was running that I think it was Terry Goddard and this other guy. It was us. Sorry.
Hey, Chuck, you won the over under. I'm surprised it took this long to come up.
Paul Bentz, LD17, JD Mesnard or AJ Cordugle?
I think Mesnard holds on. If he loses, it will be like we're looking at historic. If he loses LD17, if Mesnard loses LD17, it's likely that Teperneni wins. It's likely that 20 flip. I mean, like the way we'd be looking at for Mesnard to lose that race would be a massive blue. It wouldn't even be a blue wave. It wouldn't even be a surge. It would be a tsunami. So if he loses, I think it's a harbinger of basic absolute butt kicking across the board for Republicans. So I think Mesnard holds on. I think some other races are probably tighter, but that's one I think Republicans hold on to right
LD 28, Christine Marsh or Kate Brophy McGee? Chuck.
God bless her. I think it's a great fight, but I got Kate sign in my yard. I've been telling everybody to vote for her, but there's not enough people like me left in my district. So I'm afraid she's gonna fall in this cycle.
Paul Ulan.
I would agree. I think it's just, she won 2 years ago by less than 300 votes. And that's one of the few districts, even with, and I'm in that district as well, Chuck, where we've got
I knew there was a problem.
the Knox, the Knox looking for my kids to return their ballots by Democratic organizations. And they're running as a team where Kate doesn't have that external help, and the party has poured money in, and they've poured money in and have won, and they've built a stronghold on the beach, and now they're moving in, and I think this is the year that Senate seat falls. I mean, and Fire had supported Kate Brophy McGee, and they've endorsed Christine Marsh. That's worth 300 votes in a general election.
Paul Bentz.
The demographics of that district have changed, and whether it's this year or 2 years from now, Kate Brophy McGee will be the last Republican to represent that district in its current construction or in its future construction. I just think the way that community is changing and the voting patterns aren't in her favor. As Paul mentioned, she only won by less than 300 votes last time around. There's been more than 300 new Democrats identified and targeted this time around. So I think the numbers are not in Brophy McGee's favor. I think she is the type of legislator we want in our legislature, solving problems. So that's unfortunate, but ultimately that I don't think it's in her favor.
All right, so LD6, Wendy Rogers or Democrat Felicia French? Paul Ulan, just real quick, sir.
That is a close race. There's never, there in 10 years since that district switched on redistricting, a Democrat hasn't won there. Tom O'Halloran came close as an independent, and I along with my esteemed colleagues, I think we are all surprised when Wendy knocked off Sylvia Allen. This is the real pickup. I mean, I think Felicia has this great opportunity.
You tell a Democrat to go fast, and this is what you get.
Yeah, there you go. I think French pulls that off, and I think. Can we talk about that House district? The House races in that district.
Right.
I mean,
so
I think Art Babbitt wins that race, and I think that's where Blackman gets knocked off, and you have Coral Evans coming in. So you have two freshmen coming in from that district.
Chuck.
I think the Senate seat flips. I think the Republicans lose that seat to Coral Evans, the mayor Flagstaff, and I'm not as optimistic or not as pessimistic, I guess, as Paul is on. I'm not sure that that Art Babbitt, who's a great candidate and can win in wide spots, but I think the Republicans will hold on to one seat up there.
Paul Bentz.
I think that Republicans would be very in trouble if Wendy Rogers were to win. That would shift their caucus even further right, which is not to their benefit. At this point, I think it's likely that the Senate seat flips. I think it comes down to the number of independent voters that show up right now. The other category is about 23% of the unaffiliateds right now. It tends to be higher. So if they are late deciding and do show up, I think that tends to benefit Babbitt. If they don't show up, I think it tends to benefit Evans. But I do think that Republicans hold on to one of the seats in 6.
We are almost out of time, so I just want to go through some other districts. Just give me your picks. District 20, there's a 3-way House race there. Judy Swibert, Democrat, and then incumbents, Republican, Shauna Bollick, and then Anthony Kern. Chuck.
I don't think we're going to get to see that across the aisle with a smile man down at the legislature anymore. Mr. Kern, I think, is going to end up on the short end of the stick there.
Paul Ulan?
I would agree. And I think that Senate seat is very, very close, but I think Paul Boyer holds on narrowly.
Paul Bentz?
Boyer wins because of the firefighter support. I think voters trend towards females. We saw 4 female Democrats win in 2018 statewide office. I think that trend holds, and we see Bollock and Schweibert.
In District 21, we have a three-way race. Kathy Kinect, who ran as an independent before, now a Democrat. And then, of course, we have incumbent Representative Kevin Payne, a Republican, and another Republican, Beverly Pingerelli. Paul Bentz?
Yeah, that's a plus 15 Republican district. It's still very heavily Republican up there. And I think at the moment, Republicans still have a 6-point lead. I expect that's some of those late deciders that watch a lot of Fox News and still have their ballots in their hands. So I think it will go more Republican. So I think that's probably where the blue wave crests and lands on the shore, but doesn't quite make it to. So I think that stays to Republican.
Chuck?
Well, Kathy Kinect will probably never talk to me, but I don't think she's going to be able to pull it off. I think the Republicans will hold out there.
And Paul?
I would agree. I think Kathy Kinect has run a great race and a competitive race. It's just the numbers are a big hurdle. I think she comes close, but I don't know that she can get across the finish line.
Let's get to the last question, which is actually Chuck's suggestion, right? Let's assume that we see Democrats flip either the House or the Senate or both, or maybe split one chamber or maybe both. What kind of a legislative session are we looking at, Chuck, should that happen?
It's going to be a clown car. So, it will be very interesting to see how it works itself out. I mean, the Democrat caucus is fairly split.
Did we just lose Chuck there?
Yeah, it looks like.
All right.
Hello?
Go ahead, Chuck. We lost you there for like 10 seconds.
All right.
We tried for longer, Chuck, but we couldn't do it.
No. So I think that it will be a clown car, but so you'll be able to pick constituencies to lead on issues. Democratic constituencies sort of divided between the progressives and the more business-friendly group. As Paul was saying, the Republicans have been on the right side of the aisle, hard on the right. So there'll be some Republicans. So it'll be make your majority on an issue. And so the governor's office, which is easy to run your majority up there because it's a caucus of one. So that it'll be empowering to the governor's office to be able to manipulate and manage legislative majorities. But it will be very difficult because there'll be a lot of mud thrown around in the process.
And also it's the first year. So there's some chemistry that needs to be, you know what I'm saying. Paul Ulan, go ahead, sir.
Well, I think there's going to be a learning curve. I mean, there's no question. I don't think we're seeing the historic numbers of new members to the chamber that we have over the last couple of years. But I think it's going to be a long session, and I think Chuck's right. It's not by you're going to have to build a coalition on the issue. You can't go look at one party and try to ram the agenda through. You're going to have to build a coalition, and that's going to be a challenge given the makeup of both caucuses, where there hasn't been a lot of bipartisanship over the last several years.
And Paul Bentz?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a bit of a struggle at first. The challenge will be, does the leadership fall to what we've seen Republicans fall to on the Tea Party of the left, the more ideological extremes driving the agenda and pushing things. We saw Republicans fall prey to that in the past. And the question is, we saw most of the more mainstream or business-friendly Democrats win in their primaries. So they've already sort of survived that at one level. But which portion of the caucus drives the agenda? I think they could run into trouble if they let the more progressive Bernie Sanders leaning portion of the caucus drive their agenda, they're not going to be in power for very long, because Arizona is not a Bernie Sanders, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi state yet. We do, well, I like to say we're red with purple spots, but it's not a Dr. Seuss character. It's I think an accurate description of where we are as a state. So I think if they let the progressive portions run the show, they run in the risk of not being in power for very long. But it's going to be a challenge bringing groups together.
Well, and the real test will be if Mark Kelly wins, he's going to be up in 2 years. And then Sinema's up 2 years after that. And so that will really be the bellwether of what does it mean to be an Arizonan? Because both of them have run as Arizonans. And that will be the level set on the Democratic Party establishment out here is what do they look like? How do they vote? Because if they vote to pack the court, if they vote, for, the Green New Deal, if they vote, to out of, along the party lines, they're going to have a race next time. I mean, that's why it's really interesting to watch Arizona, because we are an independent state. We're not going to run, hard as we've just seen. We're going through a cycle where the Republicans are running into the phone booth to have their convention now. So we're going to find out what that looks like. Be very interesting.
Gentlemen, thank you again for your time. Paul Bentz, Chuck Coughlin, Paul Ulan. I see you agree pretty much on every single race, I think, except a couple. Whatever happens on Tuesday, you can be assured of one thing: we'll keep covering the state legislature, and we'll be there when chaos ensues, or if there's order next year. However long this session is going to last, the Capital Times will be covering the state capitol. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Luigi.
Thanks, Luigi.